Okay, hello friends, and welcome back to a development log, second installment. It's been a pretty productive week actually. The biggest thing you may notice is the addition of artillery tanks. These bad boys don't have near as much health and they're slower, but they shoot large projectiles in a ballistic trajectory and do a lot of damage when they explode. And something new for all projectiles now is they have splash damage. So previously, whenever you hit something, it would apply damage, but if you missed or you were close, like you hit the ground next to the target, you would not do any damage to that target. But now, every projectile has a splash damage radius around it, so when it explodes, it'll do 25% of the base damage. And if you get a direct hit on something, it'll do the additional 75%. The artillery shells have randomness to their target, so they won't hit pinpoint accuracy. If they did, they were a bit too powerful. But yeah, that's working pretty well, and I like the effect. It looks pretty cool. Another big feature I've added is the concept of build time for structures. So now buildings take time to place. So like a factory takes 5 seconds, and you can't place another structure until your previous one is done. I've also recorded audio cues for a number of events. It's actually my own voice. I just used a high-pitched version of my voice and then pitched it up a little bit and made it sound a little bit robot-y, which I like the effect. I've modified some navigation mesh settings in Unreal Engine to be less precise, just because I don't really need that precise of AI pathfinding. So that has increased the performance of characters moving throughout the level, which was my primary performance bottleneck before. That was sometimes bringing me down to like 30 or 40 frames per second. But now I can have large battles with all these tanks and pretty much maintain 60 FPS the whole time. And I don't really have a powerful computer at all. It's a laptop that's falling apart and it's like 6 years old, so this is my target. Lowest end spec for this game is my own computer. I added some cool visual effects for buildings. They have tons of bloom on their placement cube mesh now, which looks pretty cool. It's very emissive, and the emissivity and opacity decrease as the structure is built, so you get an audio cue for when a structure is finished, but you also get a visual indication of the progress of that structure finishing. I've also added health bars to everything now, buildings and tanks. The health bars are semi-transparent. They only show up whenever a structure or tank has been damaged, so they're not always present. And they decrease linearly from green to yellow to a shade of red as the unit takes more damage. I've created a menu for factories, so if you right click on a factory, you can choose which units get produced from the factory. With this simple approach right now, it'll just alternate between all of the selected units, and there's only 2. So for example, if you right click on a factory, both of the light tank and the artillery will be selected by default, but you could deselect either of those if you just want to build a certain type of tank. Eventually there'll be at least 6 different types of tanks you can build from factories, so I think I will want to implement a more detailed system where you can select which types of tanks you want from the factories, and it won't just alternate, but perhaps you could say, hey, build like 3 of these and then 1 of those or something. But for right now, I'm kind of happy with just on or off for each tank. You may also notice that the camera rotation can get very close to the ground now, which gives a cool overview of the battlefield from far away. Although it lets you see things further than I'd like you to be able to, so, eventually I plan on implementing like a fog of war system where you can only see units that are revealed within the vision radius of structures or other units that you own. But for now, it looks pretty cool.
Command tank destroyed. Respawning soon.
So I am pretty happy with the progress I've made this week and where the game's headed in general. And after this very lucrative week in terms of progress, I think I'm going to deal with the thing I need to deal with, which is how does multiplayer work? I know it's said that you should deal with this problem sooner rather than later, and trying to just bolt on multiplayer to a game after the fact is not fun. So what I intend to work on next week is just an entirely new project, very simple template project, and try and get multiplayer working on something very, very simple so I can understand the fundamentals, and then see, after I've learned all that, see how far up shit creek I am, which is hopefully not too far. I know there are several things already that I've designed that are not multiplayer friendly, specifically with like audio stuff and the menus. They don't really have the capability to work with multiple players at the moment, but can't be that hard, right? Yeah, we'll take one thing at a time, and we'll start with a completely new, simple project and go from there and just work it in to what I have here is the idea. So whenever you get the next devlog, it will probably be an entirely different set of assets you're going to be looking at in a different project, and hopefully I will be able to move stuff around on one client and have it show up on a separate one. Would be just dandy if I could get that working. I thought I might leave you with some fine examples of spaghetti code at the end here. Placing buildings is somehow like the most complicated thing that I've implemented, or at least visually, and I'm not quite sure why it looks so awful. But the thing I end up doing is, like, if I need to do something in the middle of where I had something else, I just move it up and down and squish it in, which looks terrible, but it works, and I comment sometimes. Yeah, look at all that. That's crazy. I have a lot of functions, and I've numbered them so I can kind of figure out oh god, what is this? We don't talk about that. Yeah, I've tried to number my functions so I have an idea of the order of things. That one's pretty simple, but what is this? Yeah, it's not too bad. I think these are fine. Yeah, 5, 6. 6 is a bit spicy, not too bad. Then 7. Yeah, I don't know. This one, it's not that spaghetti. Tons of variables. I think a couple of them are duplicates. And I will probably address that at some point in life. This is the logic for the factory to produce multiple tanks, and it could be cleaner, for sure. And here is pretty much everything for the main player tank. Not that much, actually, but I should probably put some of this in functions instead of just laying it out haphazardly on the event graph here, but at least I have some comments. Here is the logic for calculating the artillery shell projectiles. Basically, what the method I went with was I want there to be a constant lateral speed and a constant height that the projectile hits and a speed that it goes laterally, and take those constants and then compute the vector velocity, so like how up and how sideways, the x and the z axes, how up and sideways to shoot it, and the gravity actually of the projectile. So each artillery projectile has its own gravity calculated, basically in order to ensure that it goes laterally at a constant speed and it always hits that height. Then we get our velocity and unique gravity for each projectile individually. And this is a bunch of math that I found online, and then I had to spaghettify it. And this is the spaghettification. And it works very well. I could try and clean it up visually, but I don't think I'll have to ever touch it again, so it stays. Thus concludes the second devlog. See you again next week, and thanks for watching.